Hey guys, tonight we step into the cramped, clattering stairwells of a Roman insula, where the smell of boiled cabbage, lamp smoke, and damp bricks greets you like an uncomfortably warm handshake. The streets outside are already humming with life. Even though the sun's dipping low, the Subura district never really sleeps. And your little one-room flat, 5 stories up in a building that sways more than a senator on wine day, is waiting for you. You trudge home, dodging a goat on the stairs and sidestepping a puddle that, let's be honest, probably isn't rainwater. You push your shoulder against the warped wooden door, and it gives way with a creak so dramatic it deserves a theater career. You're home. Or at least, you're in the one-room rectangle of space that passes for a home in this part of Rome. The walls are cracked, the plaster flaked off last week, revealing rough brickwork that seems to sigh when the wind howls through it. There's a single clay lamp flickering in the corner, giving off more smoke than light, and the warmth in the room is less cozy hearth and more body heat from the couple fighting next door. You probably won't survive this lease, seriously. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And if you're listening from somewhere else in the world, let me know where you're tuning in from and what time it is where you are. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You sit down, well, perch, really, on your straw-stuffed mattress, and your entire weight makes the wooden frame beneath you creak in protest. You listen, half out of boredom and half for safety, to the sounds around you. From the floor below, you hear someone arguing loudly in Greek. Above, something heavy drops with a thud and a faint squeal. Could be laundry, could be a cat. You don't want to know. This is life inside an insula, the Roman equivalent of an apartment block. Tall, narrow, noisy, and about as stable as your cousin's 4th marriage. And here's the kicker. These buildings could go up as high as 7 or 8 stories. Although, legally, Emperor Augustus tried to cap them at around 5, due to the very real chance they'd topple over like a stack of lasagna pans in an earthquake. Historians still argue whether those height restrictions were enforced with any consistency, but judging by the wobble in your top floor, it feels like rules were more of a polite suggestion. There's no elevator. Of course, lifts won't be a thing for many centuries, so you climb every step with groceries, jugs of water, maybe even a sleepy child or a box of figs. Your legs are strong because they have to be. And by the time you get to your door, the smell of fish sauce, garum, the ketchup of ancient Rome, from 2 floors down, has somehow followed you all the way up like an olfactory ghost. Your room is one of dozens, stacked and squished together, often sharing walls with strangers you've never spoken to but know intimately through thin plaster and bad luck. It's likely less than 300 square feet, sometimes just enough space for a bed, a stool, a few cooking tools, and a clay pot you hope won't become your emergency toilet. Quaint, right? But it's not just you in here. Families of 6 or more might cram into one room, with kids sleeping in shifts and grandma perpetually muttering to Jupiter for patience. You might have a roommate too, maybe 2, possibly 3, if no one's gotten a better offer. Privacy isn't really a thing, it's more of a rumor. And despite the size, this place is expensive. The lower floors are prime real estate, closer to the water source, safer in a fire, and less likely to induce heart attacks with every climb. If you're on the top floor, congratulations, you're poor. Rent's cheaper, but your risk of falling through a rotted floorboard? Higher. On stormy nights, the roof might leak directly into your bedding. On other nights, your bedding might contain fleas that clearly missed the memo about you needing sleep. Fun fact: many insulae were built incredibly fast and with cheap materials like mud bricks, wood, and even repurposed rubble. Quirky, isn't it? Roman real estate developers weren't all that different from today's. Get it done fast, fill it with tenants, and hope the inspections don't show up. If something collapses, oops, there are more tenants where those came from. That said, some insulae were better built, larger, with multiple rooms, inner courtyards, even access to communal kitchens or latrines. But those were luxury models, likely reserved for the upwardly mobile merchants or retired legionaries with decent pensions. You, however, live in the kind of building that groans when you lean against it too hard. Through the open window, well, hole with a plank, you can hear the street noise rolling in like a tide. Voices rise and fall, coins clink, pots clatter. A fishmonger is still hawking his wares, despite the late hour, and someone nearby is playing the tibia, a kind of double flute that sounds like a goose arguing with itself. You breathe in and immediately regret it. The smell of roasting meat mixes with sewer gas, wet straw, and the slightly metallic scent of old coins. And somewhere in the blend, incense from a household shrine, probably offered to keep the household gods from abandoning ship. The roof above you shifts slightly, not dramatically, just enough to make the hanging lamp sway and your brain whisper, "That's probably fine." It's not, but it's bedtime, and if you worried about every creak in the ceiling, you'd never sleep. So you lie down, close your eyes, and try not to picture the building leaning further. Just a little. To the left. Tomorrow, you'll do it all again. But tonight, you'll lie in the half-darkness, listening to the symphony of Roman life, so loud, so messy, so unapologetically human, and let the rhythm of chaos cradle you to sleep. The stairs. Oh, the stairs. You wake up to the sound of someone already clomping down them, bare feet slapping against wood like sandals in a race against time. It's probably the kid from the third floor, late again to his job hauling water. Or possibly just late to nowhere. You sit up, rubbing the stiffness out of your neck. The mattress has left a woven pattern on your cheek that'll linger until lunch. Outside your door, the stairwell groans like an old man every time someone uses it, which is often. It's narrow, uneven, and tilts slightly to one side. You can't really tell if that's the architecture or if the whole building has shifted a few degrees since yesterday. The walls here? They breathe, not metaphorically. You can actually feel a draft slipping through the cracks, whispering secrets from downstairs. The plaster is crumbling again, powdered like cheap face paint, and a faint smear of charcoal graffiti clings to the side like a half-forgotten insult. Something about a baker and someone's sister. You don't look too closely. The structure of the insula is, let's say, creative. Historians still argue whether some of these buildings were meant to stand as long as they did, or if they were just holding their breath the whole time. You know the kind. Wooden beams that flex like stubborn knees, mortar that flakes like old bread, and walls that were clearly constructed by someone who thought straight was more of a suggestion. You step into the stairwell and descend 2 steps. One creaks, the next wobbles. The third, you skip it entirely because it collapsed last month and now houses a small family of spiders and one very bold lizard. The stairs are a communal lifeline. Everyone uses them, abuses them, drags buckets and baskets and sacks up and down until the grain dust and foot oil blend into a greasy patina. And there's no silence here. Not ever. Every footstep echoes like an announcement. Every dropped coin is a minor scandal. Your neighbor, from 2 doors down, shouts something about overdue rent. Someone laughs, but it's unclear if it's in agreement or mockery. You're headed down this morning, which is a treat. Usually, it's an uphill battle carrying water, food, and the occasional struggling chicken up to your flat like a miniature Hercules. Today, though, you're running an errand to the corner bakery. The promise of fresh bread is worth the risk of breaking an ankle. You nod to an elderly woman on the second-floor landing who's grinding herbs with a stone mortar and muttering what sounds like a curse. She's lived here longer than anyone remembers, and she somehow outlived 3 landlords and 2 stair repairs. Local legend says she once hexed a rat infestation into moving upstairs. The rats, apparently, still haven't forgiven her. When you reach the first floor, you catch sight of the building's main entrance, such as it is. It's a slumped archway framed by cracked stone and a door that won't quite close all the way. Rainwater has puddled just inside, mixed with street grime, and someone's laid a few broken tiles across it like a pitiful mosaic. The lower floors, of course, are for the rich folk. By rich, we mean they can afford to have their chamber pots emptied by someone else. They have more than one room, maybe even a kitchen space. They smell less like wet wool. Luxury. You glance up at the ceiling, or rather, the wooden floor of the room above, and spot a fresh water stain. Great. More leaks. You hope that's rain and not someone's makeshift bathroom strategy. The wood here sags in the middle, forming a soft dip like a hammock that creaks ominously when anyone walks across it. It's the architectural version of biting your nails. Back up the stairs you go. The bread's in a cloth bundle under your arm, still warm and fragrant, distracting you momentarily from the grinding ache in your calves. The 5th floor looms above like Mount Olympus, minus the divine real estate. You pause at the 3rd landing, catching your breath and listening to the familiar noises. Someone boiling lentils, a couple arguing over who misplaced the oil lamp, and somewhere the wet hiccup of a crying baby. The insula speaks in sound. If you're quiet, you can hear the lives of everyone around you. Someone singing while folding laundry. Someone praying at a household shrine, their voice low and rhythm steady. Someone else muttering threats at a cat that stole their sausage. The entire building hums, a patchwork of lives stitched together by proximity and very thin walls. It's worth noting that the stairs weren't always maintained. Fires, floods, collapses. These buildings were often patched up as needed, with little concern for uniformity. Quirky detail. In one dig, archaeologists found a stairwell that had been repaired with repurposed marble grave markers, which is comforting. And maintenance, that's a myth. Once you're in, you're pretty much on your own. The building's owner, likely a wealthy Roman who's never even seen this place, pays a caretaker, the villicus, to keep things running. But the villicus mostly collects rent and avoids eye contact. He's the kind of guy who nods sagely while stepping over a fire hazard. Some mornings, the stairwell fills with smoke from someone's overambitious attempt at roasting barley. Other times, there's spilled olive oil or a burst water jug that turns the entire path into a slip and slide of doom. You've learned to walk with caution and with your ears open. Always your ears. Because sometimes something falls. You've heard stories. Tiles sliding off the roof, urns tipped from window ledges, even a chamber pot dropped by a sleepy toddler. That's why you never, ever rush. The stairs are a trap for the impatient. Back at your floor, you catch your breath. The hallway is filled with the damp smell of drying tunics and yesterday's fish. A neighbor's door is ajar, and you glimpse a shrine tucked into the corner with little terracotta figures of Lares and Penates, the household gods. They're covered in a light dusting of flour, and probably haven't been properly honored in a week. You silently apologize for them. You're superstitious like that. You fumble with the wooden peg that keeps your door closed. It sticks. It always sticks. Then finally, the door swings open, and you're back inside your one-room domain. The stairs groan behind you as another neighbor begins their slow climb. And above, faintly, comes the unmistakable sound of your upstairs neighbor's monkey throwing something. Again. But we'll get to him in a moment, that monkey, You're still chewing your bread, now slightly less warm, but no less welcome, when it happens. A dull thud above your head, followed by a series of scratching noises, and then the unmistakable splat of something moist hitting the wall outside your window. You pause. You know the signs. The monkey is awake. Your upstairs neighbor, Marcus, self-declared philosopher of the people and part-time sandal repairman, owns a small pet monkey. Not just any monkey, mind you. A rhesus macaque with a foul temper, sticky fingers, and a particular interest in shiny things and unguarded food. Marcus calls him Democritus. You call him absolute chaos in fur. The monkey is everywhere. Some mornings, he's perching on your windowsill, gnawing on a stolen date, staring at you with unsettling intelligence. Other times, he's climbing across the laundry lines between buildings like a tiny, hairy tightrope walker, trailing someone's undergarments like a trophy. Once, he appeared in your kitchen corner holding a piece of bread that wasn't yours. He blinked slowly, dropped a single fig pit, and scampered back up the window like a ghost. Democritus also screams. A lot. Not the cute kind of squeak you might imagine. No, this is full-throated, primal shrieking that begins with dawn and ends whenever he's bored, distracted, or asleep. Usually after terrorizing a chicken or knocking over a clay lamp. You lie back on your straw mattress and listen. The monkey is now doing what sounds like furniture rearrangement. There's a bump, a scamper, and then a loud, delighted squeal. A moment later, something clinks and hits the courtyard below with a muffled plink. Possibly a spoon, possibly a hairpin, possibly a small god figurine that no longer pleased him. Historians still argue whether exotic pets like monkeys were common among poor Romans, but there's enough scattered evidence, graffiti, pet burials, and even a few frescoes to suggest that lower-class residents occasionally kept wild or foreign animals. Parrots, snakes, ferrets, and monkeys made the list, though it's unclear whether they were actual pets or just really persistent squatters. You once asked Marcus why he had a monkey. He looked at you, solemn and wide-eyed, and said, "Because cats are too predictable." You didn't follow up. But Democritus isn't just noise. He's destruction incarnate. Remember your good clay cup? The one with the painted vine design that actually held liquid without dribbling down your chin? Gone. Pushed off your shelf by curious little hands during one of his visits. You came home to find the shards still warm from sunlight, and the monkey's tiny footprints left in flour on your table. The landlord, when you actually catch him, refuses to get involved. No rules against monkeys, he shrugs, adjusting the purple-dyed fringe of his tunic. Besides, he's cleaner than most tenants. Hard to argue, really. Democritus does bathe in the water jar sometimes. Unfortunately, it's always your water jar. And yet you can't entirely hate him. There's something human about him. Something familiar in the way he watches people argue, as if filing away their weaknesses. He knows which windows are unlocked, which door pegs are loose, and which neighbors are too slow to stop a theft in progress. He's been seen peeling apples on the roof, sipping spilled wine off a broken amphora, and once, legend has it, he smuggled a coin pouch from a merchant's robe and traded it for 2 sweet buns. At least the monkey understands value. Tonight, he's quiet again. That's usually worse. You sit up, warily eyeing the ceiling, and remember last week when he managed to knock over a full amphora of oil from the top floor. It spilled down 3 flights and turned the stairs into the slipperiest Roman hazard since Julius Caesar's barber. You're still nursing a bruised elbow. The monkey's worst offense, the toilet incident, not a proud moment. It was 2 weeks ago. You were mid-meal, lentils as usual, when the window above yours exploded with sound. Screeching, splashing, swearing. A jug dropped like a meteor and exploded on the stones. The smell hit your nose a second later. Human waste. Fresh. Still warm from its chamber pot cocoon. Democritus, it turns out, had taken a particular liking to Marcus's chamber pot. No one knows how he lifted it. He's wiry but not exactly a gladiator. But lift it he did, and toss it ceremoniously out the window, right as Marcus was mid-recitation of some obscure Stoic proverb. The neighborhood still talks about it. From that day forward, all chamber pots in your section are now triple secured, usually kept under beds and covered with broken tiles. Marcus tried to apologize, but it's hard to take someone seriously when they're wearing monkey-bitten sandals and a garland of parsley for philosophical flair. Quirky detail. One inscription found in Pompeii literally reads, "Beware the monkey." No context, just that. Makes you wonder. You finally drift back to lying flat, trying to zone out the rustling above. The building sighs as someone steps into their room. There's a distant argument over vinegar, a child singing tunelessly, and yes, a soft purring gurgle. Democritus, having found something round and metallic, is now playing his favorite game. Roll the bronze coin into the neighbor's floor cracks. You close your eyes. It's almost soothing, this chaos. Not peaceful exactly, but familiar. Predictable in its unpredictability. Some say Rome was built on law, roads, and ambition. You're pretty sure it's held together by monkeys, bad masonry, and neighbors too tired to care. You pull the thin blanket over your shoulder, blocking out the moonlight that filters in through the crooked shutters. Somewhere, the monkey finally settles. A quiet thump, a gentle sigh, and just maybe, silence, for now. It's just before dawn, and you're already awake. Not because you want to be, but because someone below is yelling again. It's the baker. Of course, it's the baker. He always starts early, shouting about fresh loaves like he's auctioning off treasure. His voice punches through the gaps in your shutters like an over-caffeinated rooster. You roll over, hoping the straw in your mattress might magically realign itself into a more forgiving shape. It doesn't. There's a lump near your hip that feels suspiciously like a chickpea you spilled 3 nights ago. You gave up long ago trying to separate your bed from your pantry. Space is tight. You make it work. You sit up slowly, careful not to knock over the oil lamp. Your living space, your cubicula, as the posher Latin speakers would call it, is one room, one very small room. You could reach the wall from your bed without even stretching. In fact, if you were feeling bold, you could probably cook, pray, and change your tunic without taking a single step. Not ideal for parties, unless your idea of a good time is everyone sweating on each other and sharing the same stool. Your walls are coated in faded plaster. Once, someone tried to decorate. A thin red stripe still clings to the baseboard, and there's a vine motif near the window that might have been grapes or possibly ants. You're not sure. A former tenant probably fancied themselves a painter. Or just really liked lines. You glance up. The ceiling sags slightly, an ominous curve that feels less decorative dome and more imminent collapse. Historians still argue whether upper floors in these insulae were regularly reinforced or just left to fend for themselves. From where you're sitting, it feels like the latter. Your prized possessions are few but beloved. A small wooden box holding a bit of bronze jewelry. A brooch shaped like a dolphin, chipped but still charming. A handful of coins tucked under a tile in the floor. Yes, you know exactly which one. You checked twice yesterday. A ceramic cup with a hairline crack you pretend isn't spreading. And of course, your little household altar. Every Roman household, no matter how humble, keeps a lararium, a shrine to the household gods, the lares and penates. Yours sits proudly in a shelf carved into the plaster wall. 2 little terracotta figures stare out at you with eternal indifference. You whisper a short greeting and light a pinch of incense. Well, dried herbs that smell close enough. It's not much, but you feel better afterward. The gods like effort, even if they occasionally reward it with plumbing disasters. You pull back the wooden shutter. A sliver of grey light spills into your room. You can see the roof across the way. Tiles crooked as bad teeth. A bird nest teetering on the edge. Someone's hung a tunic to dry, flapping like a surrendered flag. Below, a donkey snorts, and a cartwheel thunks over a pothole big enough to lose a leg in. Your room smells like boiled lentils and ash, the perfume of the poor. You've lived here long enough to stop noticing, mostly. But new visitors, when they happen, usually flinch. You remember when your cousin from Ostia came to visit. She took one step inside, looked at the ceiling, and made the sign against bad luck. Twice. Still, this place has its charms. The wall next to your bed is warm from the neighbor's kitchen fire. In winter, that's gold. Your window, though cracked, lets in just enough breeze to keep the air from choking on itself. And if you lean at the right angle, you can actually see a sliver of sky. Blue, when it's clean. Pink, just before rain. Your storage system is creative. Clay pots, baskets, reused amphorae. You stash things wherever they fit. Dried herbs dangle from the rafters. A string of garlic twists lazily next to a sack of chickpeas. Your clothes hang from wooden pegs, some of them aggressively patched, others retired into cleaning cloths. Your best tunic? Folded and hidden at the back of the shelf behind a jar of pickled onions. No one's stealing from there. Quirky tidbit. Archaeologists once uncovered a third-floor apartment where someone had carved a checkerboard game into the floor near their bed. Right next to a list of debts scratched in charcoal. Sleep, strategy, and stress, all in one convenient spot. You reach for the clay jug near the doorway. Water, stale but drinkable. You swish and spit into the corner drain hole, which probably empties into the street below. Yet another reason you don't walk barefoot out there. You rub your face with a scrap of linen, tug on your day tunic, and tie it loosely with a frayed cord. No need for fashion here. If you can breathe and bend, you're dressed. There's a noise from next door, a sneeze, followed by a curse, followed by a crash. The couple next door is awake. They argue constantly, but endearingly. Last week, they fought over whether lentils should be salted before or after cooking. He said before, she said after. The monkey stole both. The building seems to breathe with you. Someone is grinding something, barley maybe. A baby cries, but only half-heartedly, like it's too tired to commit. Footsteps above you. You can always tell who it is by the cadence. The old man with the limp takes longer between steps. The teenager with the dramatic shoes stomps like he's declaring war on every board. And Marcus the philosopher? He glides, or tries to, usually while reciting lines from memory, loud enough to make the ceiling vibrate. Your room might be small, but it's a capsule of survival. A home of necessity, patched together with rope, pottery, and prayer. It's not much, but it's yours. And in a city like Rome, that's more than most can say. The stairs. You hesitate before opening your door, because you know what's coming. The climb. Your room, as you may recall from the sounds of screaming monkeys and frequent falling objects, is not on the ground floor. You're up 3 levels in a 5-story insula, what Romans called apartment blocks. 5 stories is generous. Some reached 6 or 7, though historians still argue whether anything above 5 was livable or just glorified storage with rats and rain access. Regardless, your knees say 3 is plenty. Your staircase is narrow, uneven, and blessed with a unique personality. Each step creaks like it's making a formal complaint. The wood was probably new sometime during Caligula's reign, which is to say, it's seen things. It slants just slightly to the left, which you've learned to counterbalance by leaning right, like a drunken sailor walking into a strong wind. You open the door carefully. Last time it stuck, and when you forced it open, the vibration knocked someone's laundry right off the line into a passing cart. A chicken was involved. You're still not welcome at that cheese stall. The corridor outside your door is barely wider than your arms, which is fine. Except when the guy across from you, Livius the metalworker, decides to dry his gloves out there. They smell like boiled coins and disappointment. Today, mercifully, it's just quiet. You start your descent. Step 1, good. Step 2, a little soft. Step 3, missing entirely. You skip it with the grace of someone who's done this 100 times. Because you have. The broken step's been gone for weeks. Someone stuffed a bit of straw in the hole as a warning, but it now looks like an abandoned bird's nest. You pass a door. A woman behind it is humming. You think she's new. She moved in with a toddler and a grandmother who never stops praying. The grandmother, not the toddler. The toddler mostly screams and flings pebbles. By the time you reach the second floor, your thighs are awake and resentful. There's a window here, a small, arched thing with no glass, just shutters. It opens to the street, and right now the morning sun slants in across the landing, illuminating dust motes and the edge of a painted wall fresco. It's faded and flaking, but you can just make out a myth. Probably Hercules wrestling something, or bathing. Hard to say. Could be both. Roman insulae often had shared staircases and walkways. The ground floor was prime real estate, usually rented out to shops or wealthier tenants who didn't fancy the hike. The higher up you went, the cheaper the rent, but also the worse the build quality. Fire was a constant fear, especially on the top floors, where ceilings were often made of wood and straw, and where water access required either extreme optimism or a really long rope. You pause again. Someone spilled oil. Not recent, but slick enough. You brace against the wall and sidestep like you're avoiding a sleeping guard dog. The wall here is warm, buzzing faintly with the sound of bees. Someone above keeps a hive on the roof. It's not strictly allowed, but the landlord turns a blind eye in exchange for a jar of honey every now and then. Midway down, a familiar smell wafts up. Urine. Not surprising. The latrine on this floor has been broken for days, and some tenants don't wait to reach the street. You breathe through your mouth and try not to look at the suspicious puddle near the banister. One flight to go. There's a rat. No, wait, not a rat. Just someone's dropped hairpiece. Possibly both. You don't investigate. You make the final descent and land in the central courtyard with a thud that reverberates up your shins. You're outside. The courtyard of a Roman apartment block is rarely peaceful. Right now, 2 children are throwing pebbles at a clay pot, missing both the pot and any adult supervision. A dog is barking at absolutely nothing. Someone is brushing a carpet with what looks like a bundled tree branch. And off to the side, an old man is squatting by the wall, engaged in a conversation with himself and a fig. This courtyard, your courtyard, is paved in broken tiles and compacted dirt. It's slightly sloped for drainage, but only just. A fountain sits in one corner. It gurgles weakly, surrounded by cracked jugs and soap scum. It's the closest thing you have to running water. Residents fill their amphorae here every morning, lining up with bleary eyes and crooked backs. The lucky ones get it before the children bathe in it. You glance up. From this angle, your building leans inward slightly, as if peeking down at you. The windows are mismatched, crooked, and shaded with fabrics in various stages of surrender. Some tenants hang pots from hooks. Others hang cages. Birds mostly, and one alarming instance of a lizard. Laundry flaps like surrender flags in the breeze. You nod at the baker's boy, who's setting out a basket of steaming flatbread. It smells like heaven, and you briefly consider trading your dignity for a crust. You decide against it. Dignity's all you've got, and 2 copper coins, if you can find them again under that floor tile. A scholar once wrote that insulae were marvels of urban planning, where thousands of Romans could live in relative harmony. You're not sure who he was or what he was drinking. Harmony isn't quite the word. It's more like cohabitating chaos, held together with rope, bread, and extremely specific neighborly feuds. Like that one about the fish bones. 2 months ago, a tenant on the 2nd floor, Decimus, the eel seller, started tossing fish bones out the window, straight into the alley. For weeks, the stench built up until someone finally retaliated by pouring hot broth over his doorway. The feud escalated. There were sardine guts in sandals, mysterious late-night flute concerts, and even a curse tablet left on his doorstep. No one ever confessed. But you did notice that Democritus the monkey wouldn't go near that corner for days. You step into the street, breathing the city's thick, pungent air. You made it down alive, no small feat, and now your day can begin. You glance back at your building. It leans slightly. A wooden beam juts from the 3rd floor like a drunken limb. A cat balances on the ledge above, eyeing you with disdain, and somewhere inside, the monkey laughs. You're on the street now. Well, technically an alley, but in Rome, the lines blur. Everything feels like a street if it's loud enough, chaotic enough, and has at least one chicken underfoot. You take a few cautious steps forward, dodging a questionable puddle and a man aggressively sweeping dust from one pile into another. The air smells like a stew of yesterday's bread crusts, horse dung, vinegar, and optimism. Somewhere, someone is boiling cabbage. Again. The aroma is so aggressive, it feels like it's staging a coup in your nostrils. You glance up at your insula, that brick and mortar giant. From the outside, it doesn't look much better than from within. The walls are pockmarked and stained, patched with mismatched bricks that suggest a long relationship with time, weather, and unskilled repairmen. A few wooden beams jut out at odd angles. Support, laundry hooks, or possibly just leftovers from a failed 2nd balcony. Historians still argue whether those beams were part of actual construction methods or just signs of desperate tenants making do. A delivery cart lurches past, its driver yelling at his donkey as though the animal speaks fluent Latin and is simply choosing not to listen. The cart hits a rut and a small amphora topples off. It shatters. No one flinches. The fragments join the ever-growing mosaic of Rome's underfoot history. You step around them, thankful for your sturdy sandals. Though one strap is fraying, and you mentally add "fix sandal" to your endless mental to-do list, somewhere between "find better lentils" and "stop waking up when the monkey screams." To your right, the ground floor shops of your insula are opening up. These little storefronts, tabernae, are the heartbeat of the building. They're rented out for extra income, usually by the building's owner, who is rarely seen and even less often liked. Yours is said to live on the Palatine Hill, and once visited in person, though that might be an urban legend, like honest politicians or quiet chariot races. The baker's shop is already doing brisk business. His nephew, probably 14, possibly immortal, is shoveling flatbread from a blackened oven while calling out prices to impatient customers. You can feel the heat radiating from the doorway. The air smells yeasty, and the walls are covered in soot and flour fingerprints. You nod to him, and he nods back, because morning greetings are currency here, second only to actual coins. Next door, the wine cellar is rolling barrels into place. He's a thin man with ink-stained fingers, probably from marking prices or writing poems on the back of his receipts. His shop is dim, the smell of sour wine thick enough to taste in the air. There's already someone passed out in front of the doorway. You step over him, gently. He mumbles something about Jupiter and figs. Across from them, a cobbler is unlocking a wooden chest filled with tools. His stall is barely wide enough for a stool and a customer, but his hands are quick and his gossip quicker. He tells you someone in the next insula lost their roof tiles to wind last night. Didn't notice until the cat fell in. You both laugh, though not too hard. Your roof tiles aren't exactly loyal either. You wander a few paces to where the communal latrine should be. Ah, occupied. There's a short line of annoyed tenants, each pretending not to be in a hurry. The building's own latrine hasn't worked in a week, again, so everyone's migrated here. It's technically for 2 insulae to share, but as with most Roman infrastructure, the term sharing translates roughly to first come, first relieved. First, you pivot and decide instead to fetch water. You head toward the corner fountain, the lacus, a low basin made of stone, constantly fed by the city's aqueducts. That's the idea anyway. Today, the stream is more of a trickle. You fill your jug slowly, trying not to let your eyes wander to the nearby alley where someone appears to be loudly arguing with a bag of onions. The woman next to you sighs. Her jug has a crack in it, and she's plugging the leak with her finger while giving you a look that says, "If you try to cut in line, I will hex your ancestors." You smile politely and offer a quiet "Salve." She snorts. Fair enough. You pass a wall covered in graffiti, Rome's ever-evolving social media. Political slogans, love notes, crude drawings, and increasingly desperate advertisements for lost pets and rented rooms. One new scroll catches your eye. Claudius owes me 3 denarii and still hasn't fixed the steps. Seems fair. Fun fact: archaeologists have found similar graffiti in ancient insulae, including incredibly detailed complaints about noise, theft, and the smell of cabbage. Some things never change. Your building, from this street side perspective, is a living entity. Every crack tells a story. That broken arch, collapsed under the weight of too many amphorae. That fire-blackened stone, a kitchen accident last summer involving spilled oil, a sleeping cat, and a tragic misunderstanding of flame management. That gap between shutters, where someone's been watching you for the last 30 seconds. You wave, they duck. You spot Democritus, the monkey, and freeze. He's perched on a windowsill 2 floors up, chewing something that looks expensive and doesn't belong to him. His owner, the elderly widow with more rings than fingers, is yelling in Greek. You think she likes the monkey more than her last husband. You also think the monkey might be possessed. It hisses at a pigeon and then spits. You move on. You pass a small shrine tucked into the wall. These little aediculi are everywhere, dedicated to the Lares Compitales, the guardian spirits of neighborhoods. Someone's left a fig and a bit of honey. The offering is modest, the intent sincere. You whisper a wish, not a big one. Just, "No falling roof tiles today, please." As you begin walking back toward your insula, you spot the building inspector, a portly man with a scroll and an expression of eternal skepticism. He's eyeing your structure with the look of someone preparing to write a strongly worded note. Historians still argue whether Roman inspectors actually enforced building codes, or whether they just liked to look official while doing nothing. You re-enter the courtyard just in time to hear a scream, a thud, and what sounds very much like a clay chamber pot meeting its doom. From above, someone yells, "Sorry!" A second later, "Not my fault." You look up. The monkey is gone. Home sweet home. You've barely stepped back into the courtyard when a new sound joins the usual chaos. A rhythmic clanging, like someone is trying to beat information out of an anvil. You tilt your head. Ah, Livius, your across-the-hall neighbor, is at it again. He's a Fabri Ferrari, a metal worker, and though he insists he only works light hours, his definition of that phrase includes what most people consider nap time, meal time, and sacred silence. His shop is on the second floor, which is deeply unfair to everyone above and below. The floorboards tremble with every strike. Last week, someone's oil lamp fell off a shelf because of it. The monkey ate the wick. No one knows why it glowed green for 2 days after. You glance upward to the second-floor window, where smoke curls out in lazy, petulant plumes. It smells like scorched bronze and overcooked eggs. Livius never cooks, but he does keep his lunch in the same furnace he uses to melt scrap. He says it saves time. You suspect it's because he enjoys watching sausages bubble like alchemical experiments. You decide to pay him a visit, mostly out of curiosity and partly because he owes you a replacement buckle. The climb back up is less painful than the way down, but only because you've learned to take each step like a trap might spring at any moment. You knock on his door with the back of your knuckle to avoid soot prints. He opens it immediately. Livius is wide, sweaty, and perpetually surprised. His hair sticks up like he's been arguing with lightning, and his apron is stained every shade of the bronze spectrum. His fingers are burned, blackened, and wrapped in so many linen strips, it looks like he's halfway to becoming a mummy. "Ah," he says, grinning, "you've come for your buckle." You nod, trying not to breathe too deeply. His room, if you can call it that, is more forge than dwelling. The heat slaps you like an offended deity. Charcoal smolders in a small brazier at the center, surrounded by tools, scraps of twisted metal, and what might have once been a chair. He gestures proudly at a small item on the work table, your buckle. It is somehow even chunkier than you expected, possibly weaponized. You pick it up. It's warm, oddly balanced, and shaped like a fish. You didn't ask for a fish motif? He beams. "I made it artistic," he explains. "Symbol of good luck." "Right," you say, adjusting it so the fish doesn't bite into your hip bone. Very fluid. Livius is one of dozens of craftspeople in your insula. It's easy to forget how many trades exist in these walls. The insulae weren't just places to sleep. They were ecosystems, buzzing with labor, barter, and the occasional fire. People worked from home long before it became trendy. Your building alone houses 2 cobblers, a weaver, 3 scribes, and a very angry midwife. She delivers babies and insults with equal vigor. From Livius's window, you can see across the courtyard to where the weaver hangs her dyed yarn from long poles. They drip pink today, probably madder root. Yesterday it was yellow from saffron. A few strips are tangled in the monkey's tree, swaying like angry flags. In a corner, young Lucilla sits on a low stool, wrapping wool around her fingers with the skill of someone 3 times her age. Her mother runs a tiny vestiaria, a clothes-mending stall on the ground floor. They mend, patch, and whisper secrets about everyone's undergarments. You once heard a man accused of wearing a toga, stitched entirely with horsehair thread. You still don't know if that was true, but you haven't looked him in the eye since. A voice rises from below. Morris, the elderly scribe. He's arguing with the wine cellar again. Something about miswritten invoices and the correct spelling of vinegar. He used to copy government decrees, but now spends his days documenting debts and the names of all the chickens in the neighborhood. He swears it's a public service. Everyone deserves to be remembered, he says, even Cluckula III. Historians still argue whether literacy was widespread in the insulae. Some claim it was rare beyond the merchant class. Others point to graffiti, scribes, and chalkboard menus as proof that reading and writing were common even among the less elite. Either way, Morris seems to believe he's preserving civilization. 1 chicken at a time. Livius wipes his forehead and gestures at a new piece he's working on, a metal face distorted, almost theatrical. For the shrine, he explains, a gift. He's not alone in his efforts. On festival days, your insula comes alive with handmade decorations, oil lamps, wreaths of laurel and garlic. During Saturnalia, the whole building turns into a cacophony of laughter, gambling, and loosely enforced public decency. Someone tried to decorate the stair rail with figs once. Didn't last an hour. The monkey, of course. Downstairs, the midwife yells something incomprehensible, probably at the young couple on the third floor whose baby screams like it's possessed by Mars himself. You hear a loud thunk and the sudden blessed sound of silence. Hopefully a diaper, not the baby. Back near the courtyard, the cobbler sings off-key. The wine seller mumbles threats. The toddler screams about a missing snail. And all the while, from Livius's window, you can hear Rome itself, the broader city, growing, groaning, living. Your building might be old, cramped, smoky and questionably stable, but it's also a hive of motion. People here fix things. They argue. They sweat. They burn breakfast and curse the gods. They survive. You thank Livius for the buckle, and he nods like he's given you a treasure, which in a way he has. It'll hold your tunic together and give the monkey something shiny to covet. That counts as multifunctional. You leave his smoky lair and descend again, this time with a slightly better rhythm. You're halfway to the courtyard when you hear a familiar screech, a flutter of feathers, and the unmistakable sound of something flammable catching on fire. You sigh. Just another morning inside the world's loudest apartment building. You follow the smell of smoke, not out of bravery, but because it's between you and your next chore. That's how most things work here. Rome doesn't allow for idle wandering. Every step is either a mission or a mistake, and sometimes both. The source is clearer now. Someone's cooking again. Someone always is. This time, it's the domitee on the third floor, reheating lentil stew with what appears to be equal parts firewood and poor judgment. You pass by their doorway and catch a glimpse inside. The smoke is thick enough to age wine, and the baby is waving a spoon like a victory standard. Back in your own room, you place the newly gifted buckle next to the chipped jug of olive oil and your collection of slightly dented ceramic cups. One has a crack shaped like a dolphin. You're irrationally fond of that one. You sit, just for a moment, on the edge of your sleeping platform. Bed is a generous term. And listen, there's a hum to the insula now. Not literal humming, though someone is whistling a tune upstairs that sounds like a goat trying to sing, but that low, constant buzz of people doing things. The floors vibrate with footsteps, dragging furniture, heavy sighs. It's not quiet, but it's familiar. Your stomach growls, right, food. You dig through your provisions. A half loaf of barley bread, a wedge of salty goat cheese wrapped in linen, 2 bruised figs that have seen better seasons. There's also a tiny clay pot of garum, the infamous fermented fish sauce that Romans swear by and everyone else swears at. 1 drop is enough to flavor a meal. 2 drops, and your neighbors file complaints with the city prefect. You break off a piece of bread, dip it in the garum, and bite. It's robust, like chewing regret with a side of anchovy. Still, it's sustenance. You follow it with some goat cheese that crumbles like damp chalk, but tastes pleasantly sharp. The figs are sweet, sticky, and slightly gritty. You pretend the grit is sand from an exotic shore, or not so exotic roof dust. You chew and look out the slatted shutters. From this height, you can just see across to the bathhouse domes 2 streets over. A plume of steam rises, catching the sunlight in a halo. You sigh wistfully. A bath. Now that's a dream. Because here's the thing, they may be the pride of the Roman world, but public baths are not cheap, especially for someone like you. The entry fee, small as it is, still competes with basic food costs. So, you do what most insular dwellers do. You delay. You daydream. You occasionally sponge yourself with a wet rag and call it refreshing. Your last proper bath was during a festival, when all the entrance fees were waived. The place was a marvel of warmth, tiled mosaics, and laughter echoing off the marble. You remember the tepidarium's perfect temperature, the caldarium's dense steam, the cold plunge that made your bones shiver. You stayed longer than you should have. Your sandals shriveled near the furnace and came home warped. You still wear them. The thud of footsteps on your ceiling reminds you the family upstairs is awake now. They move like elephants, but eat like birds. You hear the clink of pots and a loud sneeze. It shakes dust from the rafters onto your fig. You consider eating it anyway. You do. The tenants above you are the Severini family, 3 generations in one room. The grandfather is mostly deaf and wholly opinionated. The children use the beams as balance bars for spontaneous gymnastics. The mother is patient, except when she's not. And the father is always fixing something with string and hope. They're good people, but every time the toddler has a tantrum, your ceiling sags like it's about to descend a floor. You glance toward your wall. There's a familiar outline there, your neighbor's cooking alcove, backs directly against it. Some days you can actually feel the heat through the plaster. Today it's quiet, but there's a faint smell of garlic and regret. This sort of wall-sharing intimacy is standard here. Roman insulae are architectural sardine cans, and privacy is as much a myth as honest coinage waits at the market. You've learned to interpret your neighbor's routines through vibration. When the wall quivers rhythmically at midday, it's the cobbler doing his foot-tapping lunch prayer. When it groans at midnight, it's the couple 2 doors over. Well, bonding. You bury your face in a pillow and pretend to be a mosaic. Historians still argue whether residents decorated their rooms with more than just necessity. Some say the poor lived in bare walls, while others suggest even modest tenants painted frescoes or hung charms to invite good fortune. Your walls, at least, feature a crude drawing of a dolphin, 3 hand-sized cracks, and a laundry rope that doubles as a place to hang damp togas. You once tried to draw a laurel wreath in charcoal. It ended up looking like a spider attacked a donut. You clean your fingers on a scrap of cloth and fold it neatly. The room is small, true, but it's yours. Or more accurately, it's yours as long as you pay rent, and the landlord forgets to check the roster. The door rattles suddenly. You jolt, only to find it's the neighbor kid from across the hall. She holds up a cloth pouch. "My mother said to give you lentils. We made too many." You thank her, take the pouch, and smile. It's warm, and not just the bag, the gesture. Life inside the insula may be noisy, cramped, and lacking in what modern folks call sanitary best practices. But it has its small kindnesses. Someone always has extra lentils. Someone always remembers when your sandals are falling apart. You sit again, this time with a new bowl warming in your hands. It smells rich, spiced with cumin and bay. You'll probably trade something for that recipe. Outside, the building creaks as the sun shifts. Shadows stretch longer in the courtyard. The monkey shrieks. A baby laughs. Someone drops a jug. A scribe mutters about pigeons. It's all perfectly, predictably noisy. And somehow, you wouldn't have it any other way. You nap, but only sort of. In a Roman insula, sleep is more like extended blinking with interruptions. You lie down for a bit, let your eyelids droop, and immediately someone in the stairwell decides it's the perfect time to test the acoustics with their favorite drinking song. Still, your body does what it can. A light doze, just enough to recharge before the next round of responsibilities. You're woken by the creak of a cart being dragged down the alley below and the distant bickering of 2 neighbors, arguing about who stole whose laundry. You suspect neither. The wind does most of the stealing around here. You stretch, arms bumping the wall and your knees hitting a storage basket you forgot was there. One more inch of growth and you'll need to sleep diagonally, again. Mid-afternoon now. The light outside is golden, but heavy, like the sun's been roasting on a spit all day and is now just turning over for those crispy edges. Shadows start to slide sideways across the courtyard. That's when the air changes, just a little. Cooler. Carriers of gossip and cooking smoke. You hear a distinct thud from the top floor. That'll be your neighbor, Flavia, hauling in amphorae again. No one knows what's in them. She claims it's olives. Her cousin says it's smuggled Egyptian perfume. The truth is probably more mundane, but there's something delightful about imagining her as a secret olive oil mogul with a flair for the dramatic. You step into the hallway and glance up. The stairwell spirals endlessly, and you marvel, for the 1000th time, at the daily leg strength required to survive here. Some Roman apartment buildings stretched as high as 7 or 8 stories, though many collapsed well before reaching that. Yours is modest. 5 floors, give or take a few wobbly repairs, and some creative counting. Historians still argue whether the top floors were cheaper simply because of the climb, or if the real issue was access to water and fire safety. You know firsthand. Living higher up means longer walks, fewer bucket chain rescues in case of fire, and water that has to be carried up by hand, or worse, paid for by the jug. That's why the ground floor is for the lucky or the wealthy. Those apartments usually have better finishes, actual windows facing the street, and direct access to fountains. You've been in one once, during a delivery. The walls were plastered smooth, the mosaic floor didn't crackle like dried bread, and there was a proper wooden door with hinges that didn't groan like a dying goat. You could smell actual incense, not just smoke cover-ups. It was unnerving, too clean. You start to descend toward the shared fountain now. You carry your largest jug, still chipped at the mouth from last week's drop, but it holds water fine if you tilt it right. The journey down feels longer when you're carrying something heavy. The steps are uneven. The railing has a wobble, and every so often you pass a patch where someone fixed a crack with what looks like hardened porridge. Midway down, you pass the communal latrina, a closet-sized room tucked into the wall, lined with a stone bench that has seen better centuries. It smells historical. The Roman sanitation system is famously ahead of its time, but the insulae are often left out of that praise. Most waste ends up in cesspits, or channeled into rudimentary drains. Unless, of course, someone just dumps it into the alley, which happens frequently. You keep your eyes low when walking past ground floor windows for this reason. Trust no vase. You make it to the bottom without incident, though your arms ache. At the small courtyard fountain, 2 kids are already splashing each other. One of them tries to fill a cup using only their hands, which mostly results in soaking their tunic. A pigeon eyes your jug with suspicion. You shoo it away and wait your turn. You spot old Julia, hunched and sharp-eyed, scrubbing laundry against a wooden board. She's muttering something about curses and mildew. You wonder briefly if she's talking to the clothes or to the spirits that live in the drains. Hard to say with Julia. When it's finally your turn, you dunk your jug into the basin. The water is cool, blessedly so. You take a moment to splash your neck. It feels like divine intervention. A voice from behind you makes you flinch. Don't use too much. It's low again. It's Lucius, the aeditius, the building's semi-official doorman, janitor, and full-time gossip sponge. He lives in a small room by the entrance and knows everyone's secrets, or at least claims to. He narrows his eyes like the fountain's maintenance depends on your water usage personally. You nod solemnly, Try not to look guilty and hoist your jug. The climb back up is slower. You pass neighbors on their way down, most with baskets, a few with folded laundry. The Severini toddler tries to roll a ball down the stairs, and it bounces just close enough to make your heart jump before harmlessly skittering past your jug. He claps like he invented gravity. Your room, when you finally reach it, feels hotter than before. You uncap the jug, take a long drink straight from it, manners be damned, and sit down near the shutters again. Below, the city seems to swell with afternoon energy. Vendors call out deals, carts roll by. Someone's playing a reed flute, terribly but enthusiastically. You briefly consider taking up an instrument just to drown him out, perhaps cymbals. At midnight, the roof creaks, that's odd. You remember, the roof is shared space. Supposedly, technically. Really, it's used by whoever's brave, or foolish, enough to climb the last narrow ladder to the top. Some grow herbs in cracked pots up there. Others dry laundry. A few even sleep under the stars, when their room feels like a furnace full of snoring. You've only been up once. The view was remarkable. Tiles and domes, smoke curls from bread ovens, distant towers that gleamed like polished stone in the sun. You could even see the river glinting faintly in the distance. You'd planned to go back. That was 6 months ago. Maybe tonight. You lean back against the wall, jug by your side, belly not quite full, but not rumbling. That's a win. Through the shutters, you catch the faintest breath of breeze. And for a second, just one, you could almost convince yourself this place is peaceful. Until someone above drops what sounds like an amphora, you flinch, then hold your breath. A pause. A baby cries. Someone swears. Life resumes. You smile. The night settles in, but your insula doesn't. Darkness in ancient Rome is more a backdrop for noise than an invitation to silence. You tuck yourself under your thin blanket, more a folded woolen mat than anything fluffier, and listen. From somewhere below, a dog barks like it's auditioning for a tragedy. Upstairs, the Severini toddler is still awake, squealing in a high-pitched protest that can shatter pottery. You imagine the grandfather banging his cane on the floor, trying to make peace with both the noise and the universe's unfairness. The street outside echoes with footsteps, late-night vendors packing up, couples sneaking home after feasts, drunks slurring poetry about gods and lost loves. Your walls seem to absorb it all, the echoes bouncing back like ancient soundproofing of sorts. Spoiler, it's not soundproof. You lie back and think about sleep, but that's a luxury for those who don't live stacked like bricks. The insula hums and creaks around you, its skeleton of wood and brick protesting against the night's chill. You recall reading somewhere that the Romans sometimes hung fragrant herbs or cloth bundles soaked in vinegar near their sleeping spots to ward off insects and the occasional smell. It sounds like a 2-for-1 deal, bug repellent and mild air freshener, Roman style. You reach over and sniff your own rag, now suspiciously scented with yesterday's garum spill. Maybe you need better ideas. Historians still argue whether these aromatic rituals were common daily habits or just seasonal special cases, possibly linked to religious practices. Either way, the idea that your room could smell like a tiny garden rather than a mixture of smoke, sweat, and bread crust is oddly comforting. You listen to the rhythm of the building, the creaks, the sighs, the distant conversations fading like ghosts. There's a lull in the noise, a rare pause, and for a moment the world feels softer. Then, inevitably, a neighbor's late-night cooking kicks off again. Someone's clearly hungry. Again. You think about the thermal inertia of the walls, the way the brick and mortar absorb the day's heat and slowly release it at night. It means your room stays warm enough to sleep, but not so warm that you're roasting like an offering to Vulcan. Not that you'd volunteer. Your dreams are usually more about avoiding the heat than worshipping it. You feel the tug of tiredness pulling you down, your breath slowing, the heartbeats of your neighbors merging into a slow, comforting pulse. You're here, alive in the middle of all this chaotic humanity, a small piece of an enormous, noisy puzzle. The last thing before sleep claims you is the faint scrape of a sandal outside your door. You imagine Lucius, the gossip janitor, making his rounds one last time, probably muttering about noisy tenants, missing coins, and the cursed pigeons that have declared war on the rooftops. You smile. This place, with all its flaws, its quirks, and its relentless noise, is home. A home where silence is rare, but connection is plentiful. And as your eyes finally close, you know tomorrow will bring the same endless sounds, the same shared walls, and the same unpredictable, vibrant life inside your Roman insula. Morning cracks through the shutters like an eager rooster, though the real ones in the courtyard are already well into their morning choir. You wake reluctantly, your body remembering the rough bed and the even rougher noises that start with dawn. The house has its own way of waking up, creaks, murmurs, and the unmistakable sound of someone banging a wooden spoon on a pot in the kitchen below. Your stomach rumbles in agreement. You sit up on your modest platform, stretching limbs stiff from the night's restless sleep. The thin light filtering through the grime-coated window shows dust motes dancing lazily in the air, and you feel the sticky residue of yesterday's sweat and garum on your skin. Charming. Breakfast is a quick affair, a ritual more about survival than enjoyment. You unwrap a small hunk of stale bread, spread a little goat cheese salvaged from the back of your storage basket, and sip the last of the sour wine left over from the night before. It's better than water, but only just. The bread crunches louder than you want anyone to notice. You glance over your shoulder. No one's watching. Good. Outside, the insula is already buzzing. Merchants shout from stalls, children scamper with bare feet, and laundry ropes sag with yesterday's shirts and togas, drying under the warming sun. You remember that time you tried to dye a shirt blue with crushed berries, only to have it turn a suspicious shade of purple that no one wanted to wear. That shirt is now hanging in the courtyard, forgotten and fading. You gather your belongings, preparing for the day. Today's agenda. Work at the nearby market stall, where you sell small goods, mostly pottery fragments and sometimes leftover bread from the baker's shop. It's not glamorous, but it pays the rent and keeps the rats fed enough to stay mostly out of your hair. As you descend the stairs, the familiar creaking echoes like a greeting. You pass neighbors. Some nod, some grumble, some smile at you like you're an old friend, and some just pretend you don't exist. It's a dance you've mastered over months. Historians still argue whether the insulae fostered community spirit or bred resentment due to overcrowding and lack of privacy. From your experience, it's a bit of both. You can't live this close to people without picking up on their joys and woes, but sometimes the noise just grates your nerves. Outside, the marketplace explodes with color and sound. Vendors hawk their wares, fruits, fabrics, fish fresh enough to still twitch, and the occasional musician playing a lyre poorly but passionately. The smell of roasted chestnuts mingles with the less pleasant aromas of the city. You dodge a cart overloaded with onions, nearly toppling your basket. Your stall isn't fancy. A simple wooden table propped against a wall, some shelves for display. You arrange your goods meticulously, knowing that presentation can make the difference between a sale and a shrug. You smile wryly. Selling pottery shards isn't exactly a high-ticket item. A customer approaches, a young woman with sharp eyes and a quick smile. She picks up a cracked cup, turning it over in her hands, tracing the dolphin-shaped crack you once admired. "This has character," she says. You nod. Character and a little bit of bad luck. She buys it. The small victory brightens your day. On your way back, you pass the bathhouse again. The steam rising from the domes looks inviting as ever. You tell yourself, maybe tomorrow. The day continues with the usual mix of noise, sweat, and small joys. Children playing tag on the stairs, a fight breaking out over a misplaced cloak, and the inevitable smell of burning bread from someone's oven going awry. You inhale deeply, the scent a strange comfort. Back home, you find the Severini family gathered in the courtyard, sharing a meal. The grandfather tells stories of battles and heroes, his voice rough but animated. You listen from a distance, feeling part of the larger tapestry of this living, breathing insula. As evening approaches, you prepare for another night filled with the familiar sounds, the creaking, the shouting, the laughter, the cries. You wouldn't trade it for a quiet villa on the outskirts. Well, maybe sometimes, but mostly, no. You climb back to your room, the buckle still gleaming faintly in the fading light. Life inside this noisy Roman apartment block is unpredictable, messy, and endlessly human. The day fades, and the insula shifts gears. The sun dips lower, casting long, golden shadows across the cracked plaster and uneven cobblestones. You lean out your window, catching the sweet smoky scent of cooking fires mixed with the faintest hint of fresh bread cooling on a windowsill. Evening in your apartment block is like a slow symphony, layers of sound and scent weaving together as the city unwinds. You listen to the clatter of dishes below, the murmur of voices as families gather around meager dinners, and the occasional burst of laughter that bubbles up like a warm spring amid the grime. Children chase each other in the courtyard, their bare feet pounding rhythmically on stone. You wonder how many of them have ever felt a quiet, empty night, and whether that would be a blessing or a curse. You think back to the bustling market, the lyre player still strumming, out of tune but no less enthusiastic. The juxtaposition of beauty and chaos is quintessentially Roman. It's a city alive, unpredictable, and yes, a little exhausting. Your room feels cooler now, the afternoon heat finally giving way to a gentle evening breeze slipping through cracks and shutters. You pull your ragged tunic tighter around you, the fabric scratchy but familiar. You imagine, just for a moment, how different it might be to live in one of those patrician villas with their sprawling gardens and fountains. Quiet, elegant, and blissfully silent. Historians still argue whether the noise and chaos of the insulae fostered a vibrant social life or just a constant low-grade stress. From where you sit, it's hard to say. Maybe both. The din outside is sometimes overwhelming, but it's also the sound of life. Messy, imperfect, and real. You catch sight of a neighbor carrying a small bundle of herbs, lavender, rosemary, something else you can't quite identify. She's heading toward the rooftop, probably to hang them out to dry or use them as makeshift air fresheners. You recall the vinegar and herb bundles you sniffed during restless nights and wonder if they work or if it's just hopeful tradition. A stray cat slinks past, pausing to bat at a loose stone. You watch it disappear into a shadowy nook, feeling the soft pulse of city life vibrating all around you. The alleyways hold stories. Some whispered, some shouted. You've overheard enough gossip to fill a scroll, from scandalous love affairs to petty thefts. Lucius, the doorman gossip, would be proud. You stand and stretch, the creaky floorboards protesting beneath you. The idea of heading up to the roof, the spot you visited once months ago, suddenly feels irresistible. The cool night air, the stars stretching wide above the city, the quiet promise of a moment's peace away from the walls closing in. Climbing the narrow, worn stairs, You notice the smell of drying herbs mingled with faint smoke and earth. The rooftop is a patchwork quilt of broken tiles, pots and laundry lines, strung with clothes that flap in the night breeze like colorful flags. You settle on a sun-warmed stone slab, the city's lights twinkling below like a scattered constellation. The sounds here are softer. The distant clatter of the market, the occasional shout, but nothing close enough to pierce the calm. You take a deep breath and let the cool air fill your lungs. You think of the roof as a temporary escape hatch, a tiny piece of sky carved out for yourself amid the chaos. The wind whispers promises of quiet, and you close your eyes for a moment, savoring the rare stillness. In the distance, a flute plays a slow, haunting melody, the notes drifting up like a lullaby for the restless city. And you, perched on your precarious rooftop perch, feel a rare sense of peace. Back inside, the insula hums low, like a beast settling down for the night, but still restless. You pad barefoot along the creaking wooden beams, feeling the cool plaster walls pressing close, the familiar weight of your day's weariness settling into your bones. Even the faintest sound feels amplified here. The drip of water from a cracked pipe, the rustle of fabric as a neighbor turns over in bed, the muffled cough from a few doors down. It's as if the building breathes with you, sharing your tiredness. You think about the stories tucked away in these walls, the dreams, the fears, the everyday struggles of thousands who've lived in places just like this. You imagine the seamstress downstairs who works late into the night by candlelight, needles clicking softly in rhythm with the city's pulse. Or the elderly man in the corner apartment who hums old hymns and smells faintly of olive oil and thyme. You've never spoken much, but their presence is part of the fabric of your life here. The light from the street lamps filters through cracks in the shutters, casting long stripes across your floor. You reach out and trace a finger along one of the scratches, a tiny map of your time here. It's comforting, in a strange way, to have so much shared history embedded in this modest space. You reach for a small clay lamp on your table and light it carefully. The flickering flame throws dancing shadows, making the room feel alive despite its small size. You watch the shadows play, like little ghosts telling stories of old Rome. The light reminds you of ancient rituals, how the Romans worshipped their gods at home, seeking protection and good fortune. Maybe your lamp keeps you safe from the noisy world outside, if only for a little while. Historians still argue whether these small personal shrines were common in insulae or mostly reserved for wealthier households. Either way, it feels natural to have a flicker of light pushing back the darkness. You sit back on your bed, the lamp's warmth brushing your face. Outside, the city seems quieter now, but the hum never fully dies. Somewhere a dog whines. Somewhere else, a door slams. Somewhere a woman laughs softly, perhaps recalling a fond memory or a private joke. You close your eyes and try to hold on to these little sounds, the pulse of life, before sleep sweeps you away. Tonight, the insula feels less like a cage and more like a shared heartbeat. The walls that once felt close now seem like a protective shell, a place where countless lives have woven together into a messy, noisy, unforgettable tapestry. You drift off with the image of rooftops and stars, the soft glow of your lamp, and the unending song of the city you call home. The next morning arrives with the usual chorus, the clanging of pots, the sharp calls of market vendors, and the faint rumble of a cart rolling down the narrow street. You pull on your tunic, knowing the day will be much like the one before, yet somehow new in its own restless way. As you descend the stairs, the smell of fresh bread fills the air, mixed with the unmistakable tang of fermented olives. Your mouth waters despite yourself. You spot the baker, a burly man with flour dusting his beard, tossing dough expertly into the oven's fiery maw. It's a craft that has remained mostly unchanged for centuries. And yet, here it is, baked into the daily rhythm of the city. You think about how the Romans prized their bread, not just as food, but as a symbol of community and stability. The grain came from distant provinces, traveled over mountains and seas, only to end up in these humble ovens and in the hands of people like you. As you prepare your small stall, a strange noise catches your attention. A soft, rhythmic tapping coming from the building's walls. Curious, you press your ear to the rough plaster. It sounds like someone playing a game, tapping out a secret message, or simply passing time. Later, you find out it's a group of children playing tabula, a game involving knocking on walls and sending signals between apartments. You smile, amused by their ingenuity. Even in the crowded, noisy insula, there are moments of quiet connection and play. You remember hearing that archaeologists discovered scratched marks and holes in some insular walls, leading them to speculate whether these games were common among residents. Historians still argue whether these informal games helped build community bonds or just added to the cacophony. The day rolls on with its usual chaos. Deals struck, gossip shared, a scolding from a grumpy landlord. But amid it all, you find moments of peace. A cool breeze through an open window, the scent of jasmine from a neighbor's flower pot, the unexpected kindness of a passerby who offers a piece of fruit. As dusk approaches, you return to your rooftop perch. The sky is painted in shades of orange and pink, a perfect backdrop to the sprawling cityscape. You watch the lights flicker on one by one, like stars being switched on in reverse. Here, above the noise and the clutter, you breathe in the history, the life, the endless hum of the insula. It's not quiet, not neat, but it is alive. It is. And for tonight, that is enough. Night settles like a velvet cloak once again, thicker and darker this time. You find yourself back in your modest room, the familiar smells and sounds cocooning you. There's a rhythm here that's almost hypnotic. The steady creak of the building, the soft murmurs of neighbors settling in, the distant bark of a dog that somehow always seems to be somewhere just out of reach. You close your eyes and picture the countless souls who have lived this same pattern over centuries, each layer of history pressed into the bricks and mortar of your insula. People whose laughter, arguments, hopes and fears swirl invisibly around you, weaving a tapestry of human experience. The city never truly sleeps, and neither does this building. Yet, within its noisy chaos, you find a strange kind of peace, a connection to others, a reminder that you are part of something larger, messy but beautiful. Tonight, the sounds soften. The cries and footsteps fade to a gentle pulse, like a lullaby sung by the city itself. You breathe deeply, letting the night's cool embrace settle over your skin. The flicker of your small clay lamp casts shadows that dance gently on the walls, and you feel the weight of the day lift. Historians still debate whether the constant noise of Roman life was a source of stress or a catalyst for social bonding. Maybe it was both, just like life itself. As you drift into sleep, you carry with you the sights, sounds and smells of a world long past, but alive in your imagination. The noisy, vibrant, surprisingly intimate life inside a Roman apartment block. The walls hold stories, and tonight you become part of one. The night deepens, and the city's pulse slows. Imagine the soft breathing of the insula, the gentle sway of laundry in the cool night breeze, and the distant glimmer of stars overhead. Your body sinks deeper into comfort, the day's clamor fading like a distant echo. You feel the gentle rise and fall of your breath, the calm settling around you like a warm blanket. There is a quiet beauty in shared spaces, in the lives tangled together within these walls. You carry their stories with you as you drift, each breath a step further from the noise and closer to rest. The past, with all its imperfections and humanity, cradles you softly. Now, as your mind grows heavier, know that this noisy, vibrant life you've traveled through is a reminder. Even in the busiest places, peace can be found. Close your eyes, let the murmurs of Rome's ancient streets fade, and let sleep take you gently, quietly, deeply. Good night.